Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for joining me for this new episode of Inspiring Our World. My name is Julie Tara, and we are going to be talking about air quality and the Nikken Kinko air purifier. May is National Asthma and Allergy Month. And the last episode last week was on how microplastics affect indoor and outdoor air. So make sure to check that one out. Today, it is my joy and privilege to bring to the foreground our wonderful technical advisor for Nikken, Dave Balzer. Dave combines his knowledge of science, technology, and marketing to be a dynamic speaker, educator, and product guru. He has a BAsc in chemistry and is articulate in all things related to science, while his MBA in marketing equips him with business acumen. His association with Nikken began decades ago when he met the founder and felt a profound connection. As a product consultant, Dave has been instrumental in the research and development of many cutting-edge Nikken products. His knowledge on the benefits that Nikken products bring to the pursuit of active wellness is unparalleled. Thank you so much, Dave, for being with me today, taking some time out of your crazy busy life to be with us and talk about air. Wow.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm humbled by the introduction, and I certainly appreciate it. And in preparation for this blog, in preparation for this discussion, this conversation, I've actually done quite a bit more reading on the competitive products that are out there and how the Kinko air purifier compares to those. And I don't know if you want me to talk about that a little bit. It's up to you.
I would absolutely love to. Let me bring up just a couple of points initially to just set stage for us here. You know, there's the Epa Stat that indoor air is 2 to 5 times worse than outdoor air. That's pretty crazy. And that air quality is one, if not the major pathway that toxic chemicals and particulates enter our bodies. And we breathe a lot. I mean, it's approximately 23,000 times a day. It's crazy.
And it's not, it may be counterintuitive to a certain extent to think that, gee, the air quality inside is so bad, is much worse, 2 to 5 times worse than what's outside. Because whenever we hear about the air quality index, we hear about what's outside. But when you come inside, you've not only got the same contaminants that you have on the outside of your house, but you've also got outgassing from materials, furniture, wallpaper. You've got dust mites. And when you look at the 3 biggest allergens floating around the air in our homes, it's pollen, dust mites, and mold spores. And so if you can address those, which of course our HEPA does, the HEPA filter in the Kinko air purifier do that, then you're way ahead of the game. And I've had people ask me, well, what are dust mites? It sounds bizarre. And they're actually insects. They're microscopic insects that live on dead skin. Kind of gross. It sounds kind of gross, but you could imagine they're in your bedroom. They're all over the house. Can they fly? No, they can't fly, but they're in the air because they're so small. When you walk on the carpet or you walk on the floor and you kick up dust, you're kicking up not only particulate dust, but you're also kicking up these dust mites. So you've got pollen in the air. When I'm talking about allergens, we've got pollen in the air, we've got the dust mites in the air, and we've got mold spores in the air. And the question is, how best to clean that air so what you're breathing is pristine?
It's powerful what you say, and it's the fact that we live indoors. You know, we are indoors 90% of the time now. Like 100 years ago, we were outside 90% of the time. Now we're inside 90% of the time. And my concern so much is about the elderly, the little children, you know, people that are infirm or sick. You know, there's like, at least the rest of us, we get outside, and I mean, right. I love getting out in nature in Colorado, and the air here is actually pretty good, except when we have our fires, of course. But it's this crazy idea that we're inside 90% of the time and that the air is not good. So we really, you know, Houston, we have a problem, is what I'd say.
Right. And when you traditionally look at, okay, how can science, how can technology help us solve those problems? And of course, you mentioned smoke. Smoke particulates are incredibly bad to breathe. We recently had some fires here in Southern California, and sure enough, my Kinko air purifier in the living room and in the bedroom, I couldn't see the smoke in my house. I couldn't see the particulates in my house, but the Kinko air purifier did, and it kicked up the fan to make sure that we were removing those particles, removing those contaminants at the optimal levels. But I really wanted to talk about what the Kinko air purifier incorporates and how it does what it does in such elegant fashion.
Yes.
When you look at, you say, okay, how do you purify the air? Let's look at the technologies. One of the technologies is using a negative ion generator. And these have been around a long time. And what happens is the negative ions, and the negative ions in our case serve two functions, but I'm going to talk about the clean air function to begin with. Negative ions flow into the air, and they attach themselves to particulates and or to droplets that are in the air, or to pollen, or to other allergens that are there, which are not charged, and they negatively charge them. Why is that good? Negative, when particulates are neutrally charged, and they will bounce around. They will bounce on and off the walls. They will bounce on and off the furniture. And if you've got an active filter, now active filtration fan-based filter like we do, going, it enhances and it absolutely amplifies our ability to capture those contaminants, because it's like the negative charge is like adding Velcro to them, so that once they hit, they stick and stay, and that HEPA becomes incredibly more efficient. All right, so that's number one. But if you just use a negative ion generator, a couple things happen. First of all, most negative ion generators, in fact, every single one that I have found on the internet, generate ozone. Ozone is something that it's the president calling me. Ozone is a sterilant. Ozone is a killer. Ozone is a unstable form of oxygen that will rip apart anything that it comes in contact with. So that means you can use it to kill bugs, you can use it to kill bacteria, you can use it to kill viruses, you can use it to inactivate things, but you don't want to breathe it in. So you don't want a technology that's creating ozone, because on one hand, you're minimizing or trying to reduce the pollen and on the other hand, you're breathing in an irritant that's going to damage your lungs and damage your nasal passages and those kinds of things. So you don't want that.
Can I say one thing about
Sure,
that?
please.
Ages ago, and I started in Nikken, before we had the Kinko Air, I actually bought a system that was an air purifier because I knew it was really important for our house.
Right.
And it did that. It produced ozone. And after a few weeks, maybe 3 weeks, I remember saying to my husband, this is not good. This is not feeling right. This is making us all feel edgy. We don't usually feel edgy in the house. And I just took it out and just was like, no more. So I just wanted to say that because it was a direct experience and I had no research that I had done on ozone, but I just felt it. Ooh, not good.
Let me take that a little bit further and I'll tell you a true story. When the negative ion generators first came out, they had floor standing models, but the popular ones were the small ones that you sat on the desk in front of you. And it was a little electronic box. And on the top, it looked like it had a fuzzy ball. And the fuzzy ball, all the little points at the end of the fuzzy ball that were emitting the negative ions. And great, so it's making negative ions, but it's also producing ozone. And these units, and I'm laughing a little bit, I shouldn't be laughing because it was a tragic business failure. They produce so much ozone that the ozone ate the circuit board and the wires inside the electronic device producing the negative ions. And so they didn't last very long, and people complained and they kind of went away. The bottom line here is that what Nikken does is it says, okay, we're going to use two approaches combined in order to clean the air. We're going to create negative ions, an abundance of negative ions, millions of negative ions per cubic centimeter per second, and spew those out into the air. But we use what's known as a parallel plate technology. The bugaboo for ionizers, for negative ion generators in the past has been they use high voltage discharge, kind of like micro lightning. And when they do that, it creates ozone. So if you can do a low voltage approach and still produce the mass of negative ions that you need in order to help us purify and cleanse the air and inactivate viruses and do what they need to do, that's what we did. We don't produce any ozone. And then of course what we do is we combine that with HEPA filter, which is the best way. Again, sorry about that. I've got, I'm very popular in Washington, DC these days. No.
We know you are popular.
I'm
everywhere.
joking. They're all robot calls. And now I don't want to get into that, but yeah, it's terrible. At any rate, so what we've done is we've taken a high efficiency particle air filter, HEPA filter, combined that with another advanced layer of activated charcoal to absorb vapors, to absorb odors, to absorb gaseous contaminants that are in the air and that are coming out, things outgassing like formaldehyde, outgassing from the furniture or the wallpaper or the plastics that we have around. We've combined those and into a unit that not only produces an abundance of negative ions in order to help us make our air filter much more efficient, but also to create this this bath of negative ions that makes you feel better, that enhances your sense of wellness, that makes you feel relaxed. So we get a double benefit from the negative ion generator that we use without the negative of ozone production.
I love it that you're really bringing this to the fore, because I will say for me, that was a huge plus when we first brought it out, and what we have now with our third generation is just phenomenal. And I know that in Japan, they talk about forest bathing, and the Shinrin-yoku is what it's called, right? And it's to bring health, relaxation, and peace of mind. And I think this is a whole other piece of this, given that our world is so stressed and so many people are just tremendously stressed mentally, especially children and teenagers. And we see this, more and more, and it's really tragic. That I feel like when we have these systems in our home, we know what it feels like, and it is very, very calming, and it helps us to be happy in the middle of a lot of chaos in our world. In fact, I have these two books that I've really enjoyed: The Happiness Effect, The Positive Benefits of Negative Ions by Earl Mindell, Supercharge Your Overall Health, and then this one, The Ion Effect by Fred Soika with Alan Edmonds. And just, reading about it is one thing, and it's super exciting, but it's the experience that is so phenomenal. And when people come to my home, invariably, they tell me how wonderful it feels in here. It feels so good. It feels so light. It feels kind of bright. And I say, it's the air. And they go, no, it's your artwork or whatever. I'm like, no, I promise you it's the air,
We know it's the air. And we also know that it's the Julie Tara aura that they're picking up on, and that's making them feel better. And there's no question about it. You're in Colorado, so you've got a lot of big forests that you can walk through, as you said, the Shinrin-yoku, where, big trees, green plants give off negative ions. And that's why, besides being close to nature and feeling good and getting away from civilization for a little bit, walking in the forest, you feel good, but it's also the negative ions that feel good. And one of the other things that the Japanese have pointed out is if you're standing at the bottom of a waterfall, you feel fantastic. And why is that? And again, it's negative ions. And I can go through the physics of that, if you'd like, very quickly. When the droplets of water, and this is true for when you're taking a shower as well. You take a nice hot shower, you get out and you say, gee, I feel good. I feel relaxed. I feel, well, of course you just took a hot shower. So the bathing in that water is going to make you feel good, and you're clean, and that's going to make you feel good. But also when the droplets from the shower head hit the wet surface of the tub or the stall the shower stall that you're in, there's friction that actually occurs between the droplet and the surface of the water, just like it does at the end of at the bottom of a waterfall. And that friction, like taking a balloon and rubbing it on your sweater, it starts off neutral. It starts off, try to put it on the wall and it just falls to the ground. You rub it on your sweater, it becomes negatively charged, and you can stick it to the wall. Well, the same frictional forces apply to the droplets of water hitting the bottom of the shower. It creates negative ions. So you're sitting there taking a nice hot shower and feeling good and feeling clean, but you're also just inhaling and enjoying and immersing yourself in these negative ions. So there's no doubt that it could be effective. You can do the experiment yourself.
That's really good. I never had heard that. I never realized it was bouncing off the sides of my bathtub. And it's funny, like in the wintertime, I like taking a shower first thing in the morning, of course, but also in the evening before I go to sleep. And maybe that's a subconscious other element to just good sleep, although we have our sleep system, so I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I mean, and so the other thing that I wanted to touch on is, all right, what do when the negative ions, let's go back to negative ions being efficacious in clearing the air of particulates and also inactivating the viruses that'll be in the droplets. And the research on this now is just voluminous on negative ions or negative ion generators attaching the negative ions to a droplet that may contain a virus, and not only making that droplet sticky with the Velcro so that it can be taken out of the air by the HEPA, but it inactivates the virus so that even if that particle or that droplet doesn't find its way to the HEPA, it's no longer active. That virus is no longer active. And I'm not making this stuff up. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Google it, which I guess has become a verb. Go to Google, put in HEPA, put in negative ions, and put in CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and see what they have to say. Don't take my word for it. Go to the source. Go to people that devoted their whole lives to studying these issues. So then you look at it, you say, okay, well, why don't other people do this? Why don't other air purifiers do this? Well, for one reason, they don't have the technology. They don't have the low voltage methodology to create these millions of negative ions. So they look for some other way to do it. And what you'll see out there is, instead of a combination of negative ions and HEPA, you'll see combinations of ultraviolet light built into a HEPA tower. And ultraviolet light can kill bacteria, can inactivate viruses, but there are two problems with it. Number one, a couple problems. It hasn't done anything to enhance the efficacy or not only efficacy, but the efficiency of the HEPA filter. It hasn't done anything there. Number two, if you want to inactivate a microbe, it has to stay exposed to the UV light for a period of time. And number three, every single one of the UV systems produces ozone. So we say no ozone. We don't like the UV approach anyway, because it's too ineffective. It requires too much energy. And I mean, we're doing low voltage production of negative ions. We're Energy Star efficient. Our unit is about 35% more efficient than most of the products out there on the market. So you're saving energy, and I guess people aren't so much worried about saving, and this is an editorial on my part, they're not so much worried about using, keeping your energy bill down, as we are using less energy because that's better for the planet. And that's where I am. So I'd like to do that. And so again, we combine low voltage negative ion generation with a activated charcoal absorptive layer, followed by a very, very efficient lab grade, medical grade, clinical grade HEPA filter.
It's marvelous. And, you know, we have a lot of testimonials that flow in about the air system and what's happened to people's lives. And not only for people, but actually for animals. We've had testimonials where an animal may be quite sick for some reason, and they will literally go over and stand by the air system to breathe, even to get really close in. So it's fascinating. Another point, just to say, with the low electricity, I agree with you on both, I mean, you know, bills, yes, but also for the planet. And one of the things that I've noticed is sometimes people say, oh, I plug it in when I go to bed, or I plug it in when, and I'm like, I have mine, and I have 6 of them actually, and I have them going all the time.
Right.
You know, the voltage is super low, you know, the amount of electricity used, but I want to know that all those millions of negative ions are going all the time, not just when I go to bed and I want to plug it in. So just to say
right. And to your point, the negative ion generation is using very, very, very little power. When you turn on the fan to pull the air through the absorptive layer as well as the HEPA layer, the most energy is drawn when you're starting it, when it comes from a stop. So once it's up and running and cruising, it's using very, very little. So, and in general uses a third less power than your typical HEPA filter that's out there.
I love it that you've done all this research. I haven't done this comparative research that you've done, and it's really lovely that you've taken the time to do that for all of us. So, you know, thank you for that so much, because I don't want to go and check out every single air system that exists in the world, you know?
Sure. Well, you know, I think it's very, very important for all of us who represent Nikken to not talk off the top of our heads, to do our homework, and to make sure that what we say and what we represent is the absolute truth as we know it. And after doing as much research as I have and taking a look at competitive products, can I sit here today with you and say that I truly believe that for a home air purifier, the Kinko Air represents the best you can buy.
Well, that's powerful, and I do agree with you. I've done a lot of reading on magnetism and air and so forth, but I also love it that we can rely on you. We also have, you know, Dr. Gary Lindner, who's done a wonderful job with Air Matters on his YouTube channel, Self-Care Awakening.
Sure.
Which we really appreciate too, because, you know, some of you just have this fabulous scientific minds, which I do not, but you do, and it's great to be able to leverage that in this business, which is all about leverage. So yeah, I think, is there anything else specifically that you'd like to touch on before we go?
Let's see. You know, I think we've covered it pretty well. One of the things that you said, you have many units in your home.
I do.
And I guess it would be fair to point out that there's what's called a clean air delivery rate, a CADR, for all air purifiers, and we're well above the industry standard for that. And that rating is predicated on about 325 square foot room, which is about a 20 by 20, which is big, but it doesn't mean your whole house. So for me, it does the living room beautifully. We have another one in the bedroom, and I have another one in my office, because those are the rooms where we spend the most time. And do I think I have to have one in the spare bedrooms when there's very, very few people are there? I don't think you need to. I'm sure Nikken would appreciate it if everybody bought one for every room in their house. But what you want to do is focus on, where do you spend your time?
Yeah, well said. Absolutely agree with you on that. And just to say again, you know, it's really interesting that now we have this month that is dedicated, May, of course, springtime, in the Northern Hemisphere, you know, that there's this National Allergy and Asthma Month. So we know this is a major problem. Many people have one of these two issues, and this is a fantastic solution for that. So I really appreciate your time. I know, given that the phone's been ringing, that you are needed elsewhere.
No. I'm telling you, this is someone who I don't know, from a different country, who wants to share the fact that they have won the lottery, but they need to get my personal information so they can share it with me.
Yes,
you know?
I understand.
And what's happening now, Julie, and it's really unnerving to me. The calls come and they identify themselves. They're able to use their computers to identify themselves as somebody I know. So I pick up the phone, and it's not even a person. It's a robot. It's a recorded message that has some AI interactivity saying, "Hi, how are you?" And I always say, "Are you a real person?" "Yes, I'm a real person. I'm just using a computer," which of course is nonsense. And then I ask them what their date of birth is. And they hang up. Here we go again.
There we go again.
Let me run and get my lottery winnings.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening. I'm sure you really enjoyed the brilliance of Dave Balzer. We're so lucky to have him with Nikken. We're so blessed. And don't forget to like and comment on the podcast, and please do share it with others. Let them know that there are some phenomenal solutions for the issues they may be facing in the world today. Thanks for listening again, and we'll chat with you next week. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.